The year my parents died in an accident, I was a junior in high school. My relatives eyed the inheritance and compensation they left behind, coming by frequently to harass me. At last, I knocked on the door of my to-do neighbor next door. "Brother, are you in the underworld?" After the car accident, my father died on the way to the hospital. My mother didn't survive the emergency room, but she still managed to say the final sentences to me. She told me a few of their passwords, told me where the property deeds and other valuables were kept. Her last words were, "Don't trust anyone." She didn't even have the strength to say something sentimental. She was in so much pain, her eyes brimming with tears, staring at me, and then she was gone. I was still wearing my school uniform. I had run fast when I came. My shoelaces had come loose and I hadn't tied them back. I knelt blankly by my mother's side, listening to the doctor pronounce her death. In the face of overwhelming grief, tears wouldn't even fall. It was like I was dreaming. In the end, I took their shattered phone and, numbly following my mother's instructions, transferred all the money from their accounts into my own. The funeral was held with the help of my parents' friends, who also helped me contact a lawyer. The driver at fault, along with my parents' insurance, paid out a sum of money. Then my relatives showed up. My uncle and aunt came in brand new clothes, their eyes gleaming as they stared at our 80 square meter apartment. "Daniel, your parents are gone now. From now on, your aunt and I will move in to take care of you," my uncle declared casually. "But your cousins will have to come too. Your room is the biggest. Let the two of them squeeze in. You can sleep in the little room by the balcony. How about that?" Our home had 3 rooms. The master bedroom had been my parents'. My own room wasn't small. The smallest one could only fit a narrow bed and had no windows at all. The compensation was being handled by the lawyer and one of my parents' old friends, so the relatives didn't know the progress. My uncle said, "You're still a minor. Your uncle will keep the compensation money for you first and send you living expenses regularly. When you graduate college and get married, then I'll return it to you." My cousin was already over 20, and my uncle was worried about arranging his marriage. Just last year, he had come to borrow money from my dad. My father lent them tens of thousands, but they still thought it wasn't enough and they had never repaid what they had borrowed in the past. "No need, uncle. I can take care of myself," I said. Their expressions changed immediately. They launched into a heartfelt speech, even shedding a few tears, saying I was my father's only son, that they were worried I wouldn't live well, that my parents' spirits in heaven wouldn't rest easy. But I still refused. I was 17, not a fool. The 2 people who loved me most in this world were already gone. This old apartment building, located near several elementary and middle schools, had been my parents' plan for me ever since they married. No matter what, I had to protect it. My uncle and aunt's words sounded nice, but their eyes betrayed their calculation. I didn't agree. Soon, my younger uncle and aunt came knocking as well, also fighting for custody of me. Or in other words, fighting for the right to live in this apartment and control my parents' compensation money. Even the best soundproofing couldn't withstand such arguments. They shouted over one another, each voice louder and uglier than the last. At first they kept a veneer of civility, but soon they dropped the act. "My nephew is my sister's son. Of course he should live with me. Don't think I don't see through your schemes. My sister's compensation, you won't get a single penny." My uncle, naturally unwilling to yield, shot back, "Your sister married into the Lin family, so she became one of us. Daniel is a Lin, and what's wrong with me taking care of him? You're the one scheming for the compensation." I knew what kind of people my relatives were. When my parents were alive, they were leeches, always taking from their siblings. If I didn't have money in my pocket, they would have surely seen me as a burden too. Suddenly, the front door was pounded on with a deafening bang so hard it sounded like the door might be broken through. The quarreling stopped. My uncle cursed under his breath as he went to open it. "Who the hell?" But as the door swung open, his voice abruptly cut off. I looked past the others in the room and saw a tall young man standing at the door. Dressed in black, his short sleeves stretched tightly across a broad, muscular frame, his right arm covered in tattoos. Now he stood there with a face full of impatience, his eyes dark and cold. My uncle, so arrogant just moments ago, faltered under his gaze. Who are you looking for?" The man spoke, his voice low, heavy with irritation. "Have you made enough noise?" After issuing the warning and receiving my uncle's stammered assurance, he turned, his expression still fierce, and walked into the apartment next door. I blinked. That unit had been empty for a long time. Its previous owners had moved out after their child got into college. It had been up for sale, so it had finally been sold, and this tattooed man was my new neighbor. When the door shut again, my uncle an aunt came to their senses and turned to me. Daniel, how come you have such a scary neighbor? My aunt complained. I glanced at my tearful aunt clutching my hand, then at the others in the room, my uncles, aunts, and cousins, all of them. My parents had supported their siblings for over 20 years, yet never managed to lift them up. Now, with a fortune in my hands, I was nothing but a prize in their eyes. Uncle, and I called them each in turn, trying to keep my voice calm. I'm already 17. I can take care of myself. Please, go home. What? How could we? Their faces all changed, and they crowded around, talking over one another about what was best for me. I wasn't swayed. I made it clear I wanted them gone. I wasn't used to having others in my home. Daniel, what do you mean? You want to drive your uncle out? Your parents are gone, we're your closest family now. A bunch of people too stingy to even pay for my parents' funeral. And now they dare to call themselves family. My house can't fit so many people, I said, folding my arms and staring at my uncle. Uncle, weren't you the one who said I should transfer all the money to you? And you'd give it back when I got married? I'm almost an adult now. I might even have a partner soon. If you move in, won't I have to ask you to leave when I get married? That's too troublesome. Before my words even fell silent, my uncle-in-law roared. What? Lynn, you told Daniel to transfer the money to you? Have you no shame? You just want to use that money to buy your son a house and a wife, don't you? They started quarreling again, though their voices were noticeably lower. Each of them wanted to stay, yet couldn't stand the thought of the other staying. My place truly couldn't house so many people anyway, so they ended up pulling at each other and leaving. Of course, even if they had wanted to stay, I would never have agreed. None of them seemed to care about what I wanted, even though I was the rightful owner of the house. After shutting the door, I went back into my parents' bedroom. Their belongings were still everywhere. Nothing had changed. It was as if they had only gone on a short trip. But I knew, deep down, they would never come back. Emotions hit me with delay, suddenly overwhelming. Sitting on the floor, hugging my knees, tears burst forth and grief engulfed me completely. In all my 17 years, I had never felt so utterly alone. The stable, happy life I once had shattered into nothing, like water in a mirror. I hated the driver, hated his drunk driving, hated that he didn't die instead. But aside from prison time and money, he couldn't repay me with the living parents I had lost. Tears spilled uncontrollably, unstoppable. The house was clearly mine alone now, yet I still couldn't cry out loud, only curl into a corner and sob quietly. After that day, I began going back to school. But my relatives had no intention of letting go of this fat piece of meat. For money, they didn't even return to the village. They rented a cheap place nearby and came knocking from time to time. At first they said kind words, saying they would take care of me. But soon, my uncle said my cousin needed money for a house and a wife and asked me for a loan. Another uncle said he wanted to buy a car. My aunt said her child wanted to study in the city. It was as if they had agreed beforehand. Each found their own excuse to dig into my pockets, never once thinking that money had cost their own siblings' lives. They played the pitiful card, but so could I finally. They dropped the act and turned to moral blackmail, accusing me of being an ungrateful brat. In moments like these, I almost felt relieved that my grandparents had long since passed away. From time to time, I would see them loitering near my door, as though I were a debtor and they were creditors. It couldn't go on like this. I was beyond irritated. So, one weekend afternoon, I knocked on my next-door neighbor's door. When he came to open it, he was bare-chested, with cropped hair, looking as if he had just woken up. The tattoo on his right arm extended up across his chest, a dragon, by the looks of it, giving off a fierce impression. Brother, I suppressed my unease. Are you in the underworld? My tattooed neighbor froze for a brief moment at my words, then simply looked at me with indifference and asked, "What do you want?" His face was strong, with sharp features, undeniably handsome, but the aura he carried made one forget his looks altogether. I had observed him before. Most nights, he went out around 8 or 9, and didn't return until early morning. Sometimes he came back even later, just as I was getting up to recite my lessons, and I would hear the sound of his key turning the old lock of the door. The noise was never small in these old apartment buildings. I guessed he did physical work. His build was tall, broad, and imposing. His presence filled with a certain harshness. Faced with such a man, I felt a chill, but tried to steady my voice. Brother, I'm your neighbor, living right next door. I want to ask you for a favor. No interest. He said it flatly and began to close the door. I quickly reached out to stop it. Brother, wait, please. I'll pay you. You don't need to do much, just help me scare away a few people. The tattooed man paused mid-motion, studying me. You want to hire me as a bodyguard? Something like that. Before I could answer, he cut me off coldly. If you're being bullied, go find your parents. Looking for help from a stranger. What kind of sense is that? I don't have parents anymore. What? His tone faltered slightly, his eyes falling on my face. My parents died in an accident. Those relatives of mine keep buying what they left behind, and they come to harass me whenever they please. I lifted my gaze, watching his expression. Brother, those people who disturbed your rest before, it was them. You don't want to see them again either, do you? Those people were the ones freeloading at your place? His brows furrowed slightly. Yes, each of them owes my parents money they never repaid. Now they want to seize everything my parents left me. I nodded, then asked, Brother, what's your daily wage? Could I pay you at that rate? All I need is for you to show up when they come, and drive them off. He finally gave a short, mocking laugh. Do you even know how much I make in a day? And you dare ask? I didn't, but I had no better plan. Brother, just name a price, I asked tentatively. Instead of answering, he asked, when do they usually show up? I'm not sure, but probably round us today. It's the weekend, they know I'll be home. My uncle's already been sending me long rants on WeChat, some of them nasty. Most are voice messages. I don't even bother listening. All right, go back inside first. I heard the man's reply, his tone gruff. I left bewildered, staring at the door as it closed, still unsure if he had agreed or not. Around 5 o'clock, there was a knock at my door. I stiffened instantly. But aside from the knocks, I didn't hear the dreaded voices. The rhythm of the knock was different too. Standing behind the door, I heard unfamiliar voices talking outside. Who is it? I called. It's me, my neighbor's voice. I opened the door and froze. Several men were standing outside. Besides my tattooed neighbor, there were 3 others. They were all tall and well-built. The biggest had a buzz cut and muscles like a prizefighter, with a face that looked equally fierce. Another had dyed blonde hair, covered in accessories with tattoos running down both arms. The last wore a tank top, his hair curly, slimmer than the rest but no less intimidating. Most striking of all, they each carried something in their hands. Brother. I looked at my neighbor in confusion. He led them inside, brushing past me, and said casually, I don't have any kitchenware yet. We'll borrow your place to have hot pot. With that, he was already heading toward my kitchen, the others following in. Then he turned back, glanced at me, and added, Don't close the door. The men ignored me completely and went straight into the kitchen, busying themselves. They had brought plenty of meat and vegetables. Later, because the kitchen was too crowded, the largest of them was pushed back out. Kid, what are you staring at me for? He caught my furtive glance, his deep voice rumbling. I blurted out instinctively, Brother, your muscles look amazing. I was just looking. That somehow delighted him. He roared with laughter. Good eye, kid. Brother appreciates it. What's your name? I asked. From just a few words, I learned the big guy sprawling across my couch, making himself at home, was called John. The flashy blonde in the kitchen was Leo. The curly-haired one was Oliver. And my tattooed neighbor, his name was Joseph. Soon, the fragrance of hot pot filled the air. They carried out the pot base, along with plates of meat and vegetables, plus 2 big bowls of dipping sauce. In no time at all, the place looked more like theirs than mine. Kid, what are you standing there for? Come eat. You're at home. No need to be polite. John called out. The broth was spicy. I kept sucking in air as I ate, hot, but delicious. Beside me, Joseph popped open a can of Coke with one hand, slipped in a straw, and handed it to me. Can't handle spice. Bro, Joseph. I'm fine, I replied, overhearing how the others addressed him. I love spicy food, I just can't handle too much of it. Joseph didn't care how I'd learned his name. He simply stood, poured me a glass of warm water, and set it in front of me. If it's too spicy, rinse it first, then eat. His gesture left the others stunned. The blonde, Leo, pouted dramatically. Bro, Joseph, last time I had a breakout and said I didn't want spicy. You made me get my own pot. Oliver chimed in with the same wounded tone. Bro, Joseph, you told me before that picky eaters could get lost. John burst out laughing. Joseph only snorted. What? Eating at someone else's house and you still want to kick the homeowner out? Who's really overstepping here? The others teased him some more. Despite their rough appearances when they spoke, they were actually easy to get along with. Halfway through the meal, noise rose outside as I'd expected. I heard several familiar voices. Daniel, you still have the nerve to sit here eating hot pot? My uncle's voice boomed from outside. Clearly, they had smelled the aroma, and with the door wide open, they had marched right in. Then came my aunt's sharp tone. The elders suffer so much because of him, and he's here enjoying himself. How heartless. The whole group came together, clearly united in front as if they had discussed it beforehand. They all wanted one thing, to wring money out of me. But when they looked through the doorway, they were met with the sight of 4 grown men sitting around me. All of them stood in unison, their sheer height and muscle radiating a presence far different from my uncle's sagging bulk. The atmosphere shifted immediately, oppressive and intimidating. "Daniel, what kind of people are you hanging out with?" my uncle scolded. "If your parents knew, they wouldn't rest easy in their graves. So young, already led astray. How long do you think their money will last? You'll waste it all away on these riffraff." They strode inside, righteous indignation painted on their faces. Joseph and his friends took just 2 steps forward, yet that alone made my relatives stumble back several paces. "Daniel, what is the meaning of this? Bringing these thugs to intimidate your elders?" My aunt snapped first. She had always been sharp-tongued, but even she hesitated before these tall, imposing strangers. Joseph looked at them coolly and spoke. "Since you're supposed to be elders, shouldn't you remember that this boy just lost his parents? He's alone, vulnerable, and hasn't asked you for anything. But what about the money his parents lent you? Isn't it time you paid it back?" My relatives clearly hadn't expected this. Their expressions shifted wildly. "What money? They never lent me anything." My uncle denied immediately, swearing up and down it wasn't true. My aunt chimed in quickly. "Daniel's dad did transfer us money. Yes, but that was before his grandparents passed away. That was support money, not a loan. We never borrowed." My other aunt echoed the same excuse. Inside, I felt numb. I'd always known what kind of people they were, yet seeing my parents' sacrifices denied so easily still left me cold. Both my parents' phones were still with me. The chat record said otherwise. I raised my voice suddenly. "Uncle, did you forget? The year before last, you borrowed $50,000 from my parents. You even signed an IOU. Do you want me to bring it out, along with the chat history, and put it in your face?" Their eyes widened. They had come so often lately to demand money. How could they now be expected to hand any back? The truth was, when they borrowed, they never intended to repay. Then, suddenly, the door slammed shut. They turned, startled, only to see Oliver, the curly-haired one, had somehow slipped around to close it. "Joseph," he said with a grin, "no one leaves until they settle the debt." Panic spread. My relatives tried to turn and leave, but of course the door was locked. "What do you think you're doing? Don't make me call the police." My uncle barked. John laughed loudly. "Go ahead, call them. Let them see who's shameless here. Debt repayment is only natural. The kid is proof you owe him money. Taking you to court wouldn't even be hard." Realizing they couldn't win this, my uncle turned his glare on me. "Daniel, is this how you treat your family? Letting them bully us? Are you still a Lin or not?" "No, Uncle. You never treated me like family." My tone was flat. John burst into laughter. "Kid, you've got a sense of humor. I'll give you that." The 4 of them blocked the way with a menacing aura. My so-called elders, who usually lorded their age over me, were utterly cowed. In the end, they each pulled out several thousand, whining about paying in installments. Joseph stood by until the transfers came through, then added calmly, "Mark it as repayment." Only then did he open the door and let them go. Glancing at my phone, I saw over 10,000 added to my account. My brows relaxed. Even though their installments were nothing but a joke, the fact that they had come hoping to extort me yet ended up bleeding money, it was exhilarating. "Brother, you guys are amazing," I exclaimed. John waved a hand dismissively. "Ha, people like them only dare bully kids who are young and soft-hearted. Run into someone tougher, and they fold. Since you're neighbors with bro Joseph, I doubt they'll try again." Oliver clicked his tongue. A bunch of grown adults with working hands and feet, yet they're fixated on a kid's house and money. Shameless. We see people like that all the time. Leo plopped back down to eat, sneering, "Pathetic cowards who prey on the weak." They kept eating noisily, wiping their mouths when finished, and with a casual farewell to Joseph, they left, saying they were in a hurry for work. I looked toward my to-do neighbor and asked, "Bro Joseph, how much should I pay you guys?" He still hadn't told me their daily rate. Joseph glanced at me, then at the table. "You clean up. Keep your money safe. And don't go telling people how much you've got." He never asked me for money, and his friends seemed to have only come for hot pot. They left leisurely, too, leaving behind a big bag of untouched drinks and snacks. Just as Joseph was about to leave, I finally snapped out of it and called after him, adding his contact. I hadn't known what his job was before. He was always out late and back early. But one day I came across a post online and learned he was a bartender at a nearby bar. So he wasn't a gangster after all. Thinking back to my first impression of him, I felt guilty. Joseph had helped me out in such a huge way. After that day, my uncle, and the others, afraid of being pursued for debts, tacitly stopped coming to bother me. Another weekend came. I messaged Joseph in advance, wanting to invite him and the other 3 over for dinner. I checked his bar's hours there'd be enough time for a meal. At first he only replied with 2 words, "Don't need." But after I insisted, he relented, telling me to send him the restaurant address and time, and he'd notify the others. When the time came, I knocked on his door. Out walked a man in a wine-red shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows, the top button undone, his neckline open. The tattoo on his right arm extended faintly across his chest, half hidden, half revealed, with a silver cross necklace hanging over it. Joseph carried a faint trace of cologne. "Let's go," he said to me. The restaurant wasn't far from his bar. I had chosen it on purpose. I booked early, and we had a private room. The other 3 had already arrived. "Daniel's here, come sit. Tonight we owe you one," they greeted. I walked over and smiled. "No way, John. It's me who owes you all. Things have been peaceful lately, thanks to you. Don't be so polite with me." But when their eyes shifted to Joseph, Oliver suddenly whistled. "Bro Joseph, coming out with the pretty kid and dressing this flashy." Joseph kicked him lightly on the shin. "Shut up. It's work clothes." The 3 of them burst into laughter. "Work clothes?" Seeing I didn't understand, Oliver slung an arm over my shoulder and explained. "Daniel, bro Joseph co-owns a bar. Leo and I are in the resident band, and John is security. There's short staff these days, and good bartenders are hard to hire. So, Joseph stepped in himself. Turns out, men and women alike keep flocking in just to admire his face. Leo the blonde grinned slyly. Our bro Joseph's basically the bar's poster boy now. Anyone else can take leave, but not him. Every night there are rich ladies and gents asking if he needs money, if he wants to be kept." Joseph shoved a wedge of watermelon into his mouth. "Quit corrupting the kid. 17's still a kid. I had 2 girlfriends by then." Leo mumbled around the fruit. "So that's why you never got into college," Joseph shot back. "Pfft. What? Now you're attacking my education," Leo huffed. "Bro Joseph, you went to college, and now you're still working the same bar as me. And you can't even shut up my mouth with food." The dishes had been pre-ordered, and not long after we sat down, the waiter began bringing them in. Midway through, Joseph excused himself for the restroom. When he didn't come back right away, I slipped out too. Passing the front desk, I spotted him trying to pay, only to be told the bill had already been settled. He turned just in time to meet my gaze. I grinned. "Bro Joseph, I told you it was my treat. I paid already." Joseph muttered, "Since when do a bunch of adults let a minor foot the bill?" He grumbled, but a moment later couldn't resist adding, "Where do you even pick up this kind of tact at your age? My mom taught me. If you're going to treat someone, you do it wholeheartedly." Joseph lifted a hand and tapped me lightly on the head. "High schoolers don't need to think about this stuff. Focus on studying, that's your job." When we finished, the others invited me to swing by their bar sometime. Leo leaned forward with a grin. "Daniel, our bar's fun. Lots of handsome guys and pretty girls. With your looks, you'd be a hit." Joseph cut him off before he could finish. "Daniel, I'll take you home." Then he shot Leo a look. "Leo, don't go corrupting him." "Bro Joseph, why so uptight? Anyone overhearing would think our bar's not legit," Leo retorted. Joseph ignored him. After that dinner, my relationship with Joseph did grow a little closer. Still, there wasn't much overlap between us. I was a student, he was a bar owner and bartender. We were simply on different tracks. I slowly learned to live alone, going to school by day, coming home to an empty house at night. When summer break arrived, I spent more time at home, most of it buried in exam prep. Joseph's bar was doing well. Many nights he wouldn't get home until nearly 6 in the morning. One night, I couldn't sleep. By for a .m. I was still awake. As I went to the bathroom, I suddenly heard a heavy thud outside the door. At that hour, the only one it could be was Joseph. I hesitated, then carefully cracked the door open. The corridor light was still on. Joseph lay collapsed on the floor. I froze, then rushed over and crouched beside him. "Bro Joseph," I whispered, shaking him lightly. The reek of alcohol rolled off him. He was completely drunk. "Brother, wake up," I urged. I patted his pockets but couldn't find any keys. He stirred faintly, but never opened his eyes. At least I could tell he was breathing steadily, not in danger. Glancing up and down the hallway, I realized I couldn't just leave him lying there. Gritting my teeth, I hauled him up, half carrying, half dragging him into my apartment. Joseph was tall, solidly built, heavy. It took everything I had to get him into my room. Once I'd pulled off his shoes, I turned off the lights and door, then stumbled back to my own bedroom. The price of insomnia, was that the next morning I didn't wake until the sun was already high. The first thing I saw when I stumbled out of my room was Joseph, sitting in my living room. I had no idea how long he'd been there. "Bro, Joseph, you're up so early," I blurted. He turned his head toward me. Still in the clothes from last night, he rubbed at his brow. How did I get in here? He really didn't remember. No surprise he'd been drunk out of his mind. I briefly explained to him what had happened, including how I couldn't find his keys on him. Joseph patted his pockets, then concluded, must have left them at the bar. I handed him a set of disposable toiletries. "Bro, Joseph, I'll order some takeout. What do you want to eat from the bathroom?" The sound of running water stopped, followed by his voice. "Whatever you're having, I'll have to." When Joseph came out and saw the takeout boxes on the table and the stash of instant noodles in the corner, he frowned. "You usually survive on takeout and instant noodles during breaks. What's wrong with that?" I looked at him, confused. "When school's in session, I eat at the cafeteria. At home, takeout's just convenient. I can cook, but I'm not very good at it." Joseph didn't say anything else. After finishing his meal, he pulled out his phone, sent someone a message, then left, taking the trash with him. It should have been just another ordinary day. Until the following evening when Joseph sent me a message, "Come over for dinner." It was the first time I stepped into Joseph's apartment. Several dishes were already set out on the table, their aroma mouth-watering. Dressed in a black tank top, Joseph brought out a bowl of soup. "Sit, bro, Joseph, you can cook." I was still a little stunned. He grunted in acknowledgement, placed the soup before me. "Eat more. I can't finish it alone." There wasn't a single dish that wasn't delicious. I gave him a thumbs up as I ate. "Brother, you're amazing." Joseph didn't bother to be modest. He tugged at the corner of his lips. "Of course. I haven't felt this kind of eating-at-home atmosphere in a long time." Even if it wasn't his neighbor's home, the sentiment was still moving. I buried myself in the food, careful not to show how touched I felt. From that day on, my tattooed neighbor would occasionally showcase his cooking skills and invite me over for meals. "Bro, Joseph, how about I chip in for groceries? It doesn't feel right always eating for free." Joseph was tossing a pan while I helped with prep. I heard him scoff. "You think I need your money?" I knew he wasn't short of cash. Still, there's an old saying, when you eat from someone's hand, your tongue grows soft. He was only cooking extra portions out of convenience. I told myself not to overthink it. After the prep was done, I stood there staring at him for a while before blurting out, "Bro, Joseph, you're this good looking, you make money, you can even cook. How come you don't have a partner?" Even as another guy, I had to admit Joseph was the type many people would find irresistible. Joseph paused, fell silent for a beat, then turned back and gave me a light kick. "Go on, you brat. How are you this nosy already?" When senior year began, I was back to eating at the school cafeteria. Most days I left early in the morning and came home after evening study. The workload was heavy, but on weekends I still occasionally got to enjoy Joseph's cooking. Time passed quickly that year. My 18th birthday came and went in the middle of exams. Nobody knew, and nobody remembered. My phone still held the birthday messages my parents had sent the year before. I'd grown taller, and little by little, I climbed out of that dark shadow. But I couldn't return to my old cheerful self. Senior year was a blur of test papers and knowledge points. Whenever my mind drifted elsewhere, it was quickly drowned out again. I had bragged to my parents before, saying I'd get into the city's best university, one of the country's renowned 985 schools. I never considered going far away. During the second semester of senior year, Joseph changed the way he fed me. His bar business was busy, so when I finished evening study, he was usually still at work. He gave me a key to his place so I could go there after class and heat up the dishes he'd set aside for me. Maybe it was because I was still growing, but I ate a lot. Usually after evening study, a bowl of instant noodles with a slice of ham was already a luxury dinner. Most days I just gnawed on bread. Compared to that, Joseph's meals were extravagance itself. I tried transferring him money, but he wouldn't take it. The least I could do was wash the dishes and tidy up his place after eating. When he found out, he laughed. "What? You think you're a part-time maid getting paid in dinner?" He stopped me from cleaning after that. Thanks to Joseph, I grew taller, my complexion healthier. I knew, deep down, that his "I'd just cook extra" was only an excuse. He pitied me, sympathized with me, and offered a neighbor's kindness. Like old Granny Joe downstairs, who often came up to give me eggs because she'd been close to my mom. But Joseph was different. He was something special, though I couldn't quite say what made him so. The night the college entrance exams ended, I met up with my study group for a small celebration. There were 6 of us, boys and girls. The organizer was a girl in our group, Emma, who along with her desk mate was one of the only two girls. We're all adults now, right? She said excitedly. Let's go to a place where we can eat and drink. Sound good? When she mentioned it was a trendy bar, a bad premonition tugged at me. Following her to the entrance, I saw the sign and finally confirmed it was Joseph's bar. I'd never been to a bar before and didn't know what to expect. This one, called the Long Pour, was lively. Purple lights, music still soft for now, not yet at peak hours. The menu had both food and drinks, pricier than outside, especially the non-alcoholic stuff. Board games sat stacked on the table. My eyes drifted to the bar counter, and there was Joseph. He wore a crisp white shirt, his hair slicked back into a classic pompadour. The bar seats were nearly full. Beside him was a female bartender with a high ponytail, also strikingly beautiful. Look, there they are, the two bartenders everyone's been talking about. Loads of people come here just for them. The girls in our group whipped out their phones, snapping photos and zooming in. That one's Joseph, right? How can someone be that handsome? Shame there aren't any seats at the bar. I'd love to sit right there. I'd rather sit by the pretty bartender, one of the guys joked, though he couldn't help admiring Joseph's tattoos, calling them cool. I kept staring until Joseph suddenly looked up and glanced our way. Startled, I quickly lowered my gaze. Why'd he look over here all of a sudden? He doesn't think we're underage, does he? Someone whispered. Before long, our food and drinks arrived. These bar snacks are ridiculously good. No wonder they've got so many good reviews online. Good-looking staff, tasty food. Wait, hold up. Is that bartender actually coming over here? I jerked my head up. Joseph was already standing at our table, carrying a tray with 6 glasses of drinks. Hello, but we didn't order these. Joseph smiled, and under the bars lighting his smile looked devastatingly charming. I know. You all just finished your exams, right? These are on the house low-alcohol drinks for you to try. We blinked in surprise. You could tell. Do we really look that nerdy? Someone asked. Wide-eyed, honestly curious. Joseph chuckled, finally letting his gaze settle on me. Daniel, first time bringing friends over, and you didn't think to give me a heads up. At once, all my classmates' eyes turned back to me. So, how did your exams go? Joseph asked. Not bad, one of them replied. Didn't feel too hard. Brother, do you really have to ask about exams in a place like this? Someone muttered. Before leaving, Joseph said, hope you all enjoy yourselves. It wasn't until later that we discovered the bill for our table had been completely refunded. Daniel, you know that bartender? One of the girls looked at me with shining eyes. What's he like in private? Does he have a girlfriend? And the female bartender beside him, do you know her too? She's gorgeous. We're neighbors. He's a good person. I don't know. I don't know her either. I answered their questions one by one. There was no doubt about it, Joseph had just given me an enormous amount of face. We had originally planned to leave before midnight, but things took an unexpected turn. I had overestimated my drinking capacity. Aside from the low-alcohol drinks Joseph gave us, we'd also ordered other alcohol, and between chatting and playing games, we finished it all. At first, I only felt my head grow heavy and my limbs unsteady. Later, the world spun and then everything went black. When I came to, my head still felt leaden, and my surroundings were unfamiliar. Outside, noise buzzed faintly. I was in a small room, lying on a sofa, with piles of miscellaneous things stacked nearby. A suit jacket was draped over me, carrying the faint scent of cologne the same as Joseph's. My phone buzzed in my hand. I glanced at the screen. Nearly 3 a.m. The group chat was filled with unread messages, the latest one tagging me. Apparently, when I passed out, they hadn't known where I lived. So they went to the bar counter to find Joseph. He had told them he'd take care of me and send me home after work. The rest of the chat had drifted to graduation trips and other cheerful nonsense. I buried my face in my hands. What an embarrassing lightweight. I closed my eyes again, resigning myself to my fate, still debating whether to step out. When the door suddenly opened, footsteps entered, along with a stranger's voice. Joseph, you're really hard to get. Since you like men, if you don't want to be with me, fine, but one night together. That's not too much to ask, is it? I'm not the clingy type. My heart lurched. The next second, Joseph's voice cut through, cold and sharp. Aren't you clinging right now? The man chuckled lowly. Only because you've kept me wanting. Why don't you just be nice? Give me what I want, and I'll stop bothering you. You don't want to take anyone home. That's fine, we can do it here. I don't mind. Hey, don't push me, get out. Joseph's voice was final. The door slammed shut. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of a single set of footsteps. They drew closer until they stopped right beside me. Then, a light kick tapped my calf. Since you're awake, get up. Time to go. I cautiously opened my eyes and met Joseph's lowered gaze. My heart skipped a beat. Bro, Joseph. How did you know? You frowned just now. I sat up, stammering softly. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I never said you were, he replied. Places like this are messy, no matter how proper they look. With a tolerance like yours, better not to come again. Oh, I tried to stand, but my body wavered uncontrollably. In the next instant, a familiar tattooed arm steadied me. Can you walk? Yes. But Joseph didn't let go. Only when we stepped outside did I realize the bar was still open, bustling with customers. Bro, Joseph, is it okay for you to leave now? Yeah, they can handle things. For some reason, the walk home felt unusually long. Finding it awkward to keep holding me up, Joseph shifted, slinging his arm around my shoulders instead. The bar wasn't far from our neighborhood. Walking didn't take long. I figured that was probably why he chose to live nearby. At my building entrance, we parted ways. After reporting into the group chat, I took a quick shower and collapsed into bed. Outside, the cicadas shrilled relentlessly in the summer night air. I lay awake, replaying the words I'd overheard at the bar. Thoughts circled endlessly until they coalesced into one conclusion. So that's how it is. Joseph's care for me was nothing more than neighborly concern, but mine for him, not necessarily. A terrible sign. After the exams, we set off on a graduation trip together. A year of studying side by side had forged a strong camaraderie. On the fourth day of the trip, Joseph sent me a message. Where are you? The moment his name lit up my screen, my lashes trembled. Nothing was worse than realizing one's first stirrings of love, especially when the person wasn't my peer, nor a girl. Still, I honestly told Joseph where I was. He didn't say much, just replied, stay safe. Halfway through the trip, a surprise romance bloomed within our group. Emma and my deskmate, Sean, started dating. Seeing their hands clasped together, I gaped, though no one else seemed shocked. You all knew? I asked. Sean rolled his eyes. Daniel, is your head really filled with nothing but books and exams? Didn't I always drag you along to eat with her and discuss problems? Emma laughed. He even brought me milk tea. Sometimes you didn't notice, but he brought me milk tea too. I muttered. That's different, Sean declared, grinning smugly. I blinked, belated realization dawning. So, I've been the third wheel all along. Their laughter left me with no dignity to salvage. Still, I couldn't figure out how they'd ended up together. So I privately asked them both one simple question. What does it feel like to like someone? Emma tilted her head, thoughtful. It's like, no matter what you're doing, they pop into your mind. And also, it's hard to explain. Sean's answer was more direct. Don't you think she's ridiculously cute? Like, impossibly cute. No. Blind fool. He shot back without hesitation. I never did fully understand their answers. But one thing lingered in my mind, just as Emma had said, when you like someone, no matter what you're doing, you can't help but think of them. The day of our return, we took an afternoon flight. After landing, we parted ways one by one at different subway stops. Dragging my suitcase back home, I happened to run into Joseph just as he was heading out. As always, he was impeccably dressed. It had been days since I last saw him. During the trip, I'd barely had time to check my phone, but now that I was standing before him, a surge of pent-up emotions rushed forth, beyond my control, pulling my gaze inevitably toward him. Bro, Joseph, back already? Did you have fun? He arched a brow at me. I nodded. Good. Then get some rest. I'm heading to work. Come to my place for dinner tomorrow, he said. Once inside my apartment, I caught sight of myself in the full-length mirror, still carrying the unmistakable air of a student. A world apart from Joseph. We didn't match. I'd seen the men and women who tried to flirt with him, and without exception, they were all stylish and polished. But once feelings sprout, they grow like wild grass, spreading beyond control. I even began to dream about him. Dreams I could never speak aloud, from which I woke in shame and emptiness. At the end of June, exam results were released. When the page finally refreshed, the weight in my chest lifted at last. I should have been celebrating with family, but the house was silent, just me, whispering to myself. The urge to share was overwhelming, so I knocked on the door next door. The moment my knuckles rapped against the wood, I realized Joseph was probably still asleep. I stopped, but before I could retreat, the door opened. Joseph stood there, clearly just woken, looking a little irritable. Daniel. I thrust my phone toward him, the screen glowing. Bro, Joseph, my exam results are out. Joseph fixed his eyes on the numbers shoved in front of him, then let out a low whistle. Wow, that's a great score. He didn't know where my results ranked, but seeing the figures surprised even him. Suddenly, a hand ruffled my hair. Startled, I froze as Joseph asked, "So, what schools are you thinking of applying to?" I was a bit slow to answer, stumbling through my intended choice. "Not bad," he said at last. "That way, you'll still have time to come home some weekends." From filling out applications to waiting for admission results, the time wasn't long. Yet it dragged with a mix of anticipation and unease. When my acceptance finally came through, I spent an afternoon at my parents' graves, sharing the good news and my worries. I knew this wasn't the future they had imagined for me, but no one can control the way feelings are born, the way they spread. I remembered my mom once musing to my dad about what kind of girl I might like in the future. My dad had laughed for ages before replying, "You're thinking too far ahead. Our son will make his own luck." But now, would they be disappointed? I would never know. What I did know was that I wanted to see Joseph. Just to see him would be enough. So, one summer evening, I went to his bar alone. I arrived early, when it was still quiet, and slipped into a seat at the counter. He wore a black shirt, his movements deft as he chipped ice, poured liquor, then shook the cocktail shaker with practiced ease. A stream of gleaming liquid flowed into a glass. He spotted me, though for a while he didn't acknowledge me. I ducked my head, pretending to study the menu. A few minutes later, a glass was set before me. Amber liquid filled it, garnished with a slice of lemon. "What's this?" I blinked. "Bro Joseph, I didn't order." Joseph stood across from me, staring steadily before finally saying, "Virgin Long Island iced tea. You drank soda with me before, remember? With your tolerance, you really think you can drink alcohol?" His lips curved faintly. "Just watch the show." He didn't ask why I was there. Didn't press for answers, only left after a few words to tend to other customers. This video is an original work of the YouTube channel Bamboo Shadows, and is published exclusively on this channel. Please don't re-upload or share it on other channels. I sat quietly watching. Joseph's work persona was different from the neighbor I knew, witty, engaging. It was no wonder people liked him. Suddenly, a hand landed on my shoulder. A man leaned close, his breath warm against my ear. "Hey, handsome." All alone, the puff of air against my skin felt like a kiss to my ear. Goosebumps raced down my arms. His hand slid from my shoulder down my back. "What's with the big reaction?" He chuckled, pulling back before dropping into the seat beside me. In the dim light, I could see him clearly, a young man in a flashy floral shirt, broad from what looked like regular gym workouts. But the way his eyes lingered on me made me uneasy. "Handsome, fate's brought us together. Let me buy you a drink," he said. I shook my head. "No need." He suddenly leaned in, lowering his voice. "You came here for Joseph, didn't you?" The truth struck too close, and guilt flared. He smirked. "Give up, handsome. I'm a regular here. Joseph's never left with anyone. Odds are, you're not his type. Why not give me a chance instead?" Instinctively, I leaned away, glancing up at Joseph. He was already frowning in my direction. The next moment, he strode over. "Finished." His voice was calm but sharp. "I'll take you home." The man beside me looked as though he'd seen a ghost. It wasn't until we stepped outside that I finally turned to Joseph. His expression was unreadable, faint, distant. "Don't come to places like this again," Joseph said. "Crowds like these are a mix of everything. Bad men don't wear the word bad on their foreheads. That guy, he's hit on people here more than once." I was lost in my own thoughts, but I still listened, murmuring responses each time. At the foot of our building, Joseph stopped. "Go on up." "Bro Joseph, aren't you going back to the bar?" I asked, surprised. I'd assumed he was done for the night. He hummed an acknowledgement, his gaze settling on my face for a moment before he suddenly added, "Once you're in college, you'll have plenty of peers around you. Spend time with them. That's when you'll figure out what really suits you, what you truly like." For a second, I froze. Then it hit me, my clumsy attempts at hiding emotions were useless before Joseph. He knew everything. With his experience, his perspective, he probably saw me as no more than a child. And yet, he was dignified, careful. But as for me, how could I possibly rein in the feelings that surged within me? Looking into his eyes, I gathered my courage, my voice unsteady, but firming. "Bro Joseph, I want to know if there's any chance. Because I really do like you." The word like slipped out, my flushed face hidden by the night. "No chance." Joseph's tone was not harsh, but it left no room for fantasy. "Go upstairs. Don't bring this up again." He turned and walked away. I stood frozen in silence for a long time, before finally climbing the stairs with heavy steps. I had made a mess of things. Joseph was probably already regretting the kindness he had shown to a mere neighbor. Kindness that had led me into such unrealistic thoughts. I couldn't bring myself to cling to him. That would have felt like repaying kindness with betrayal. Or perhaps my courage had simply run dry, I no longer had the strength to speak up again. For the rest of that summer, I did my best to avoid Joseph. He must have noticed, but if he did, he never said anything. In September, I hauled my suitcase to campus, officially starting my university life. After the college entrance exams, many of my classmates had undergone astonishing transformations. Scrolling through their social media, it was as if they had become entirely new people. What I failed to realize was that my own changes were just as startling. My style had shifted. I now sported a fringe cut, and I had more admirers, both male and female. Stepping from high school into university, I was struck by how frighteningly tolerant the outside world was. One particularly persistent pursuer was a senior, 2 years above me. We were in the same club. Before his confession, I had never even thought in that direction. But his words were sincere, painfully so. He asked me to give him a chance. I didn't refuse. And so, things between us became ambiguous. At the very start of winter break, our club organized a group outing. When we voted on a venue, Joseph's bar appeared as one of the options. His bar was wildly popular by then. I voted for another place, but in the end, the other venue won by a single vote. A place full of young people inevitably meant noise and chaos. We played games until we were giddy, and drank more than a little. I'd secretly been practicing my alcohol tolerance. Though I still wasn't great, but at least I could hold a little. On stage, scantily clad young men and women danced feverishly, each draped around their partner of choice. Beside me sat 2 senior girls, shrieking so loudly I thought the roof might collapse. The music was deafening. I slipped away to the restroom, splashing cold water on my face until I felt clearer. In the mirror, I saw a young man caught somewhere between boyhood and adulthood. I wiped the droplets from my face slowly. A heavy wave of cologne filled the restroom as someone walked in behind me. He took the tissue from my hand and gently wiped my face. "Daniel, drunk?" "Not really." Jaden lifted my chin with his other hand, dabbing away the drops sliding down my neck. His gaze was strange, tinged with that unspoken adult implication, before falling squarely on my lips. "Senior, that's enough," I murmured in reminder. Jaden chuckled. "If you're drunk, I'll take you back to school." I shook my head. He leaned closer, as if to study me more intently. And just then, the restroom door opened again. Strangers wouldn't have mattered, but to my horror, the newcomers were Joseph and Leo. Leo no longer sported his dyed blonde hair. Instead, a sleek black wolf cut made him look even trendier. Well, if it isn't our Daniel. What a coincidence. Joseph, of course, saw me too. To be caught flirting with an ambiguous senior in a restroom by the very man I used to like, it made me want to sink into the floor. "Bro Joseph, bro Leo." What a coincidence, I greeted stiffly, forcing the words out. Unfortunately, Leo only smiled slyly. "This place? My partner bought it last year. I'm the boss's man. We just asked bro Joseph to come hang out." His gaze shifted to Jaden at my side. This is my senior. Our club came here for a gathering," I explained. "I see." Leo's tone suggested he'd seen through everything, though he didn't press further. Instead, he clapped Joseph's shoulder. "Bro Joseph, you've been quiet all this time. What's this? Catching up in a restroom? What kind of hobby is that?" Joseph shot him a glare, then turned to me. "Have fun. Stay safe." I nodded quickly, tugging Jaden out with me, not daring to care what those two thought. Back at the gathering, the games resumed. At one point, the punishment was kiss someone, though fortunately, it never landed on me. When the party ended, winter break truly began. One evening, around 9, I returned home. The sound of my door unlocking must have been loud, because the door next door opened, and Joseph appeared in the hallway. "Break already?" I froze. "Bro Joseph, you're still home?" In my impression, this was exactly the hour he'd be busy at the bar. Joseph regarded me for a moment before replying simply, "Not going tonight." Once inside, curiosity got the better of me. For the first time in ages, I searched his bar on social media and learned the top bartender had changed. 2 months ago, a mixed-race guy with natural brown curls had taken Joseph's place in popularity. Just as tall and imposing. Of course, customers loved novelty. No wonder I'd bumped into Joseph elsewhere that night. He really did have time now to just play the role of owner. Since July, I had deliberately avoided Joseph, steering clear of anything related to him. Even when his posts surfaced on my feed, I didn't click. Eventually, the algorithm stopped showing them to me. Meanwhile, Jaden still messaged me morning, noon, and night, even called sometimes. After asking first, his pursuit wasn't overwhelming, more gentle, even respectful. But that only made it more painful, sharpening the memory of my old infatuation with Joseph until it ached like a wound. During the break, classmates from my major roped me into a competition project. One student provided the equipment, but we needed several locations. One option was simply a normal apartment, so I offered mine. 4 of us in total, 2 boys and 2 girls, divided tasks. The first male classmate arrived, and as I let him in, Joseph's door opened too. "Bro Joseph." Heading out, Joseph's gaze flicked to the boy behind me, his expression tightening for a moment. "Bringing friends home?" I nodded, leading my classmate inside. The door closed behind us, sealing off his line of sight. Later, the 2 girls arrived together, and I went downstairs to bring them up. Planning scripts and shooting scenes took time. This particular location took 2 days. On the second evening, I escorted my classmates downstairs to catch rides. It was bitterly cold. The first 2 caught their cars quickly, leaving me alone with the last girl, whose ride was stuck in traffic. We chatted casually until her car arrived. I watched her get in, then turned back, and was met with teasing laughter. "Daniel, bringing your girlfriend home." From the shadows of the corner, several figures emerged. "Bro Oliver, John," I faltered, then, at the man behind them, added, "Bro Joseph." It had been a long while since I'd seen John and Oliver. "What brings you here?" John, still broad and burly as ever, grinned. "Almost New Year's. Bro Joseph said to come help move some holiday benefits for the staff, I see." John slung an arm around my shoulders, grinning as he teased about the girl I'd just seen off. "Not a girlfriend, bro John. Come on. You brought her home. If not a girlfriend, then at least something going on. Daniel, don't tell me you're the type to mess around with one-night stands." What nonsense. I had just opened my mouth to explain, but Joseph strode past me before I could say another word. His steps were quick, carrying a gust of wind with them. And in that moment, I realized something. He hadn't answered me. So, in Joseph's eyes, did it now look like I brought a man home last night, and a woman home tonight? Not explaining seemed suspicious, but if I went out of my way to explain, it would look like I was trying too hard. In the end, I simply chose silence. The filming went on, keeping me busy. For several days I was leaving early and returning late. Finally, it wrapped up, leaving only editing and photo selection. On New Year's Eve, Joseph called me over for dinner. It wasn't just the 2 of us, several employees who weren't going home for the holiday had also come. After the meal, most of them had to head back to work. The bar was lively on New Year's Eve. I stayed behind to help Joseph clean up the aftermath. The kitchen was quiet, save for the sound of running water and clinking dishes. Joseph looked almost the same as he had 2 years ago, only now his presence was even more magnetic. He never talked much about himself. I had no idea whether he had family, or where his hometown even was. "Bro Joseph, Happy New Year." He kept his back to me as he replied, "Happy New Year." As for Jaden, things between us had ended. The reason was simple. Not long after the new semester began, I accidentally found an app on his phone. That's when I realized though he was chasing after me, his pursuit was split between body and heart. He'd been having one-night stands with others even while he was supposedly courting me. We didn't part on ugly terms. After all, he had never truly been my lover. I hadn't invested much in him emotionally, so we simply returned to being senior and junior, maintaining politeness. He asked to meet me privately, and I agreed just to make things clear. We met at a small bar. "Daniel." Jaden's eyes lowered. "I was wrong. Can you give me another chance?" That was when I learned one of adulthood's cruel lessons. No matter how sincere a declaration of love may seem, it could still be an act. When I didn't answer, Jaden pressed on. "Maybe you don't understand, but in our circle, most people are like this. I promise if we're together, I'll give you everything. Body and soul, only you." Jaden was, objectively, not bad looking. "Senior, let's leave it here," I said simply. I didn't want to drag it out. I lifted the drink he had ordered for me, sweet on my tongue yet something felt off. "What's in this? Just a little fruit wine," Jaden replied lightly. "Daniel, are you drunk? Let me take you back." "No." I raised my eyes, glancing around the bar, then lowered my voice. "I'll just use the restroom." Slipping down the corridor, I spotted the back door near the bathrooms. Without hesitation, I pushed it open, left the bar, and hailed a cab. I gave the driver my address. My head grew foggy fast. I dug my nails into the base of my thumb just to stay barely lucid. That drink had been anything but fruit wine. The alcohol content was strong at the very least. Returning to campus wasn't an option. My phone buzzed relentlessly in my pocket, but I ignored it. The ride back felt endless. When I finally staggered into my building and into the elevator, I pressed my floor only to tumble forward the moment the door slid open, collapsing into a broad chest. My body went slack, all strength draining away. "Daniel." An arm caught me, holding me upright. Most of my weight sagged against him. A familiar masculine cologne filled my nose. "What happened to you?" The voice was near, yet seemed strangely far away. My hands fumbled over my clothes and pockets. Then I realized I had forgotten my keys. But somehow, I still ended up inside. Not my home. I was laid down on a sofa, with someone hovering, asking me questions. My face burned. Or was it my entire body? He leaned too close, his breath achingly familiar. My eyes narrowed, and instinct guided me. I reached up, pressing my lips to his. Soft. Silence fell instantly. The taste was unfamiliar, yet not unpleasant. Then I was shoved back. A tattered arm clamped around my throat, pinning me against the sofa cushions. "Daniel, do you even know who I am?" My gaze struggled to focus. The blurred face sharpened. My mind couldn't think. My words and actions ran purely on instinct. "Bro Joseph, I feel awful." I was carried into the bathroom. Warm water sprayed down over me. I remembered him asking me something, but my tongue couldn't form a reply. My jacket and shoes were already gone. As the heat coursed over my skin, quickly followed by a chill, I could only cling to him blindly. I leaned in to kiss him again, but he didn't respond. Too busy peeling away the soaked clothes clinging to my body. When I was finally bare, he pressed me against the edge of the tub and kissed me with a force that left me defenseless. My head spun. Through half-lidded eyes, I saw his hand disappear beneath the water. A strange sound slipped from my throat, swallowed at once by the kiss. It still wasn't enough. I wanted more, closer, deeper. He washed me, then wrapped me in a wide bath towel and tossed me onto the bed. My legs dangled off the edge. Someone knelt at my side, and as unfamiliar pleasure coursed through me, my hand instinctively tangled in his hair. I vaguely recalled Joseph stepping away to take a call. Gone only a handful of seconds before returning with something in hand. He braced himself over me, asking if I knew what he was doing. "I know," I murmured. He didn't answer after that. Fingers gripped my chin. His voice commanded in my ear, "Daniel, look at me." I tried. I really did. But my vision wouldn't focus. Pleasure and pain tangled until thought itself deserted me. Clarity only returned the next morning. The unfamiliar room, the aches in my body, the evidence etched across my skin, all of it brought the night before crashing back. I sat up, alone, stripped bare. Closing my eyes, I whispered to myself, "Dead, utterly dead." I pulled on one of Joseph's shirts, bare feet padding across the floor. I found my clothes in the dryer, quickly changed, then snatched up my phone. Fleeing felt like the only option. My thoughts were chaos as I headed toward campus. How had it come to this with Joseph? Even if I had always harbored those feelings, hadn't I just fallen into someone else's trap? The discomfort in my body slowed me down. I called another cab and left. Not long after arriving at school, my phone rang. I hesitated, then answered. "Where are you?" "At school." My voice was small. "Daniel." Just hearing him say my name dragged a memory of last night to the surface, and my body trembled. "I went to the market this morning," Joseph said evenly. "Bought a chicken, planned to make soup to help you recover. And you had just enough energy to run off to school. Bro Joseph, I have class this afternoon." Silence on the other end. Then, "What time does it end?" "I'll pick you up." His tone made it clear. Whether I liked it or not, I was eating that meal. And yes, I had class, but school wasn't my true reason for being here. "Jaden, whatever you have to say, tell it to the police." I didn't dare imagine what might have happened if he'd succeeded last night. The thought was revolting. I didn't care how ugly the fallout might be. Why should the victim be the one to feel guilty? The rest of the day, campus was abuzz. Police, administrators, even Jaden's advisor all had their hands full. For me, the damage hadn't been irreversible, but that didn't absolve him. He would pay. As for evidence, even if the alcohol metabolized too quickly to show up in my blood, there were still the bar's surveillance tapes. I had already contacted the owner, claiming I'd lost something valuable, and requested a copy. I'd seen it before I even arrived. Jaden had made a suspicious motion, as if adding something to my drink. I hadn't guarded against him, hadn't even considered the possibility. But now, the police would gather what they needed. One way or another, his reputation was finished. He had once spoken of applying to grad school. Now, he'd be lucky to keep his degree. I didn't regret it. I didn't need an apology. What I needed was for him to pay the price. The police would continue gathering evidence. One way or another, the stain on Jaden's record was permanent. He had once spoken of applying for graduate school now. He might not even be able to graduate at all. I didn't regret it. I didn't need an apology. What I needed was for him to pay. By the time everything was wrapped up, I couldn't make it back to campus. Joseph kept calling, pressing me, so I finally sent him the police station's address. When he showed up, his brows were furrowed. I was waiting by the door. "Was it about last night?" he asked. "What exactly happened?" I thought for a moment, then gave him the simplest explanation I could. "It's been dealt with." Joseph had no choice but to drive me back. The air around him was heavy with unspoken tension. I sat down at the feast he had prepared, eating quietly. "Don't forget your keys tonight," he said at last. I showered and planned to turn in early. But just before bed, a knock sounded at the door. Joseph stood outside, his expression written with displeasure. "Don't you have anything you want to say to me?" "Bro Joseph, thank you for last night," I replied. "Besides thank you." I didn't quite understand what he meant. Joseph's gaze locked onto me, and suddenly he spoke, stressing the fact we slept together. "Bro Joseph, don't worry. I won't cling to you. I really am grateful." Abruptly, Joseph stepped inside, closing my door behind him. So detached? What? Would last night have been fine with anyone? The words cut deep, cruel in their suddenness. My heart reacted faster than my mind. Bitterness welled up. I lifted my eyes to him. No. If it were anyone else, I would have asked them to take me to the hospital. That edge of violence in Joseph's aura dissipated by half. "Why did you just leave without a word this morning? And why didn't you tell me you were going to the police?" I didn't understand why he was asking these things. It wasn't his concern. "Bro Joseph, it was just sex, not a relationship," I reminded him. His eyes narrowed. "Just sex?" I stared back at him, then spoke. "You rejected my confession. You've never said you like me. So we're still just neighbors, aren't we?" "Bro Joseph, do you really think sleeping together means being in love? You own a bar. You of all people should know better." Joseph suddenly stepped forward, pinning me against the wall. His deaded hand gripped my chin, his gaze fierce. "So, what then?" he said harshly. "Should I have dragged you to my bed the moment you turned 18? Fucked you until your head could only hold thoughts of me?" I had always known Joseph wasn't a gentleman, but his words still stunned me blank. Memories of the previous night came crashing back, my knees weakened. "Bro Joseph, calm down," I urged. "You were the one who said we weren't possible. I regret it. Isn't that allowed?" He bit my lip, his tone sharp and rough. "It's only been a few months, and already you've had men and women hanging around you. Who taught you to play so dirty?" I froze. "Men and women," Joseph said coldly. "I don't care how many people you've entangled with this past semester, cut them all off." "What does your silence mean?" I didn't answer. Instead, I countered softly. "Bro Joseph, do you like me?" The man in front of me was silent for a moment, then admitted, "I do." "If I didn't, would I have made sure you felt so good last night?" "That's not true. You hit me and called me a slut." Before I could finish, my lips were devoured. Our mouths tangled until I heard him murmur against my ear, "That wasn't hitting you. And it wasn't an insult. You sounded like you enjoyed it, didn't you?" His kisses rained down again. When I swayed on unsteady legs, he lifted me onto the sofa, continuing. It was only kissing, yet it left me dizzy, undone. His breath brushed my ear as he whispered, "Daniel, I'm 8 years older than you. Liking a boy who's just become an adult makes me a pervert. You have to allow me the right to have misjudged at first." I belatedly retorted, "So if I'm 19 now, does that mean you're not a pervert anymore?" "Pervert," he said with a crooked smile, his callous fingertip grazing lightly across my lower abdomen. Then, with a low laugh, he asked, "And you? Do you still like me?" Staring into those dark eyes, I found myself unable to deny it. "I do." "Then cut everyone else off." He bit down on my shoulder. "I don't care if any of them ever had a legitimate place in your life. You have me now. I'm the only one." Sweetness surged through me, leaving me lightheaded all over again. "Bro Joseph, only you." Our relationship began in earnest during the spring of my sophomore year, and carried on from there. During breaks, I usually stayed over at his place. His bed was big and comfortable. By the second semester of junior year, I started looking for internships. I bought myself a suit choosing a brand I'd once seen in Joseph's closet. He was taller, built differently, so I couldn't wear his. I stood in front of the full-length mirror, fiddling clumsily with cufflinks, not realizing Joseph had appeared in the doorway until his hand covered mine, fastening them properly. It was my first time in such a formal shirt and slacks, and I felt I looked surprisingly good, though it was still novel. Joseph picked out a tie from his wardrobe and looped it around my neck, adding a watch. "There, looks good. I'm off then." I slid on the gold-rimmed glasses from the table. My nearsightedness was mild, but for an interview, I wanted everything perfect. "I'll drive you," Joseph said. "No need." I promised to meet a classmate at the subway station. We both have interviews at the same time. Whether it was the outfit or my professional knowledge, the interview went well. I secured the internship. Afterward, Joseph bought me several more suits, some too flashy for my role as an intern. He only said, "There will be occasions you can wear them." And so, one evening, I wore a silky white shirt, a charcoal vest, tailored black trousers, and those same gold-rimmed glasses. My head rested against Joseph's thigh as I gazed up, dazed, at the man in his own suit and tie. My obsession with his sharp figure mirrored his own with mine. Later, I graduated. Joseph's bar expanded, opening another branch. He bought a spacious penthouse, and we moved into a new district together. By then, Joseph was in his 30s, and his mature charm was undeniable. His dented hand cupped my face, eyes lingering on me for a long moment before he muttered, "When you reach my age, I can't imagine how irresistible you'll be." He confessed that at times, the 8 years between us felt unbearable. I traced his jaw with my lips and murmured, "Even so, a loyal puppy always loves his master."